Hey everybody, Gromos here with some more DCS action. Now, since we took a look at some more modern planes and weapons in the last two videos, I thought it would be interesting to also see what DCS has to offer in terms of World War II era planes. Now, currently there are three World War II era fighters available in DCS: the P-51D Mustang, the P-109K4 and the Focke-Wulf 190 D9. But it is planned to extend this lineup. The next World War II plane that should be released is the Mark 9 Spitfire, and then the P-47 Thunderbolt and also MA-262 Schwalbe are also in the works, together with the France 1944 map to play them on. Now, that is DCS Europe 1944. Also in development are a T5 and a G2 Stuka, as well as a few others. For this video though, I thought we'd take a look at the plane that started it all, the P-51 Mustang. In DCS we have the D model of this famous long-range escort fighter, with 650 caliber machine guns in the wings as armament. In addition, the plane can also carry 500-pound bombs and H-4 rockets in the ground attack role. So let's take a look at the mission in the plane, which hopefully is showing off the P-51's module a bit and the detail in which the plane is modeled. Keep in mind that the 1944 France map is not out yet, so the Black Sea map is substituted. So here's the scenario. It's morning January the 1st, 1945, and we are sitting in our P-51D on a small airbase in Belgium called Y-29, currently home of the 352nd and 366 fighter groups, and just started a pre-flight in this Mustang that came back from maintenance work, for a test flight in it that is scheduled to take place today, as is usual with planes just coming back from maintenance. The planes of the 482nd Squadron are just taking off at this moment to form up for a fighter sweep. We can see them pass in front of us as they take off, but just as we watch the first Mustang take off and take to the air, we can suddenly see some more airplanes approaching from the northeast. Now, who are they? There isn't anything like this scheduled. Maybe some other fighter group passing the airfield, but taking a closer look, they don't look like any Allied fighter to me. Well, the AA battery seems to come to the same conclusion and is opening up on the approaching planes. They are German fighters, a surprise attack on the airbase. So we better get this plane started up and off the ground. Let's get the flap handle up. We start with flaps up and they carburet the cold air intake lever forward to open up the ram air intake in the nose. Then the fuel shaft off to on and the prop RPM to the left all the way forward for 3000 RPM takeoff power and the throttle a little forward. Then battery and generator on with the switches to the right, and we're ready to get the engine started. Fuel booster pump on and prime the engine a bit. We will prime it for about 4 seconds as the engine is cold. Then I activate the starter and let it turn around a bit, and then set the ignition switch to Bose for Bose magnetos. I switched the magnetos on a bit too late though, and the engine isn't catching on the first try, so I prime it some more and hit the starter a second time. And the second time around it fires up right away. Then I put the mixture control to run and we are ready to go. Let's get this thing moving before an enemy plane strafes us on the ground. I release the wheel brake and start to move. The taxiway to the runway is to our left, so I turn that direction. Now to maneuver the plane on the ground you can use the rudder, though that is only for wider turns, or the wheel brakes. You can brake the left and right wheels individually, which allows you to turn around tighter, but you have to be careful not to spin the plane around in the ground loop. Also, when you brake with both brakes, you have to be careful not to flip the plane on its nose. While we're on the way, let's get the weapons ready. Safety on the middle console to guns and camera, which turns the guns and gun camera on. And to the left I switch the K-14 sight to both fixed and gyro reticle and uncage the gyro. Set the wingspan a bit up and the distance to as close as possible, as I like to shoot from close range. Just as we pass an exploding truck to the left, we reach the taxiway to the runway and turn onto it. Now another Mustang is just taking off, also scrambling to get into the action, so I have to check the runway before I move onto it to make sure it is clear and there is no collision. Looking quickly over the runway I can see another Mustang just getting ready to take off, so I have to slow down a bit and make sure I don't enter the runway before he passes me and is off. So I hit the wheel brakes a bit to slow down a bit and stop before I enter the runway if necessary. I have to be careful with the brakes though, as you can easily flip the plane on its nose with the brakes if you're not careful. So you have to start to slow down early enough. You can't just do an emergency brake in the last second, not without flipping the plane over on its back at least. But the other Mustang passes in front of us and is off, and there is no other fighter on the runway. So I don't have to stop and can get right on the runway myself. I use the wheel brakes a bit to turn on the runway and then roll down in takeoff direction. No reason to stop on the runway. Now, before I take off, I quickly uncage the artificial horizon. I like to do that on the runway, so I don't have to reset it before takeoff, as taxiing at faster speed often knocks it out of alignment. And last but not least, I get the canopy closed, which I had opened before for better visibility on the ground. So, all set and let's go! Now, we are on a deck and time is of the essence, so I don't have time for slowly increasing throttle or other flight school shenanigans. Throttle and prop RPM are full forward, which gives me 3000 RPM and 61 inches of mercury manifold pressure. Takeoff or military power setting, which gives me 1400 horsepower at this altitude. Now, full throttle is not putting the throttle lever quite as far forward as it goes. There is a stop, and if you push past that, you can get to 67-inch manifold pressure, war emergency power. Now, this is an emergency, but at this low altitude, war emergency power won't help and not do anything but overtax the engine. As a matter of fact, down here even military power is taxing for the engine, so you have to keep an eye on it and make sure you're not overdoing it. Well, we made it. We are in the air, the gear's up and we're gaining speed, and I also checked my rear a bit as I took off to make sure I'm not getting attacked as I took off from the runway. Now, originally I wanted to climb away a bit, gain some altitude and use the Mustang's great dive speed. A large dogfight has developed to the east of the airfield. Some planes from the 390 squadron that took off earlier apparently came back and also joined the fray, which helps even the odds. Now, I figured I might go there and help, but then I can see some green traces over the airfield. Some enemy planes are still attacking it, and they are lower than I am as they do so they are good targets to intercept. So I turn around back to the airfield I just took off from, looking for the plane that I just saw strafe the airfield. I find the enemy plane as it pulls up back over the city after its strafing run, and I pull up after it and slowly close the distance. It's a Focke-Wulf 190 D9, and as I feel I'm close enough, I open fire. But my first burst goes a little too high as the Focke-Wulf 190 pushes its nose down. I fire a few more short bursts, and I get a few hits on the enemy plane, which does some lazy defensive maneuvers, but nothing too drastic, probably an unexperienced pilot. And eventually I hit something important and the Focke-Wulf bursts into flames and the pilot jumps out. Now I look back to check my rear and to watch the 190 go down. But as I look below me, though, I can see another Focke-Wulf 190 below and behind me pulling up in my direction. I turn tight to the left to get out of the enemy's plane's line of fire. The 190 tries to follow for a bit, but my Mustang turns a bit better than the 190 and he has to break off. As he does so, a friendly Mustang or two pass me and chase after this 190. I turn after them, and as I look in their direction I can see that the Focke-Wulf 190 is still trying to turn into me, with the friendly Mustang right on his tail. I turn with them at first, but then I can see another Focke-Wulf 190 a bit higher above them, turning in front of me, which is not yet chased by anything it seems, so I decide to go after this one, checking my rear to see if the other 190 is still around, but it seems the Mustang has chased it away, so I concentrate on closing in on the 190 in front of me. I was throttled back just a little bit to conserve the engine. Now I go back to 61 inches of manifold pressure to close in on the 190 faster. I get the gyro sight on it and fire a quick burst. I get a hit on the 190 and the 190 starts to maneuver, and I fire a few more controlled short bursts, when suddenly I can see another Focke-Wulf 190 behind this one, his wingman apparently, and I of course don't want to end up in front of this one. So I switch targets and drop down behind the rear 190 and fire at close distance and get some good hits taking the 190 out. Now I look for the one I originally attacked, but I can't find it anymore. There seems to be no more planes in the immediate vicinity that I can see at this point, but there's still a fight going on a bit east of the airfield, and by now I managed to be a bit above this fight, so I can fly in that direction and then drop down behind an opponent. I just turn my nose into that direction as I see a few planes are about to pass below me, and I am looking for them to see if one of them is enemy and I can attack them. But just in this moment I notice a plane behind me. Another Focke-Wulf 190, probably the one that I attacked earlier, is slotting in behind me, so I roll around and turn out of the Focke-Wulf 190's way so he can't get enough lead to fire on me. Since I build up some speed, I can't turn too tight without blacking out, but I can still turn tighter than the 190 D9, and I am just passing over two other planes as well, another 190 chased by a Mustang. Now I get my nose around pointed at the 190 that showed up behind me, but I don't get enough lead to fire on it as it passes in front of me. So as the Focke-Wulf 190 flies past in front of me, I roll around to follow it. I turn a bit too tight though, and stall the plane for a second, and the plane flips on its roof, which makes me lose sight on the 190 for a second. As I get rolled around again, I pull up after a Focke-Wulf 490. I think it is the one I was following, but I am not sure, it could be another one too. There are plenty around, so I check my rear quickly to take a look. I couldn't see anything behind me, but after seeing how much higher this Focke-Wulf 490 is than me, I figured it's probably a different one. But still, I go after it to attack it, while I can see a few other planes getting hit and going down all around me. I am still at 61-inch manifold pressure, so since I'm pointing my nose down now and I don't need full throttle right now, I throttle back a bit so not to overtax the engine, as I at the moment can't really look at the engine gauges. I close in on the Focke-Wulf 490 and with the help of the gyro sight I get a few hits firing short bursts at the enemy plane, as I slowly get closer to it. Now the Focke-Wulf 490 changes direction and is turning slowly the other way, but I still get closer to it and fire at the Focke-Wulf 490, and after a few more hits and getting a little bit closer, I get the Focke-Wulf 490's horizontal stabilizer, including its elevators, and the pilot jumps out, with the canopy almost hitting my plane. I take a quick look back to make sure nothing is behind me and then quickly check my engine instruments. Everything is looking good, oil temperature is even lower than I thought, and then I look back out again, and as I do so and look back I can see I am being approached by something smoking. Apparently a damaged Focke-Wulf 490 has decided that it hasn't enough yet and is approaching me from behind to attack. The damaged 190 even fires a burst before I can turn out of the way and I take one hit, but nothing serious it seems. The damaged 190 however is not particularly maneuverable anymore, so after turning out of its line of fire I can just roll around again and turn into the 190 and slot in behind it, closing in to finish it off. I am quickly in fire position behind the damaged plane and start to engage, and I get a few quick hits in, but as I get closer I soon have the problem that thanks to all the smoke coming from the damaged plane I can't see the 190 properly anymore, so my attacks are pretty much educated guesses at that moment, and I can't really say how effective they are at this point. I also have to be careful not to get too close and ram the Focke-Wulf 490 by accident. Then however the Focke-Wulf 490 turns a bit and I get a quick clear view of it. I fire a burst and it hits the wing, which comes off. And the pilot jumps out of his doomed plane. Looking back after the attack I can see another Focke-Wulf 490 right behind me though, and I turn around and up to get behind this one. As I turn around I lose sight on the Focke-Wulf 490 for a second, but as it turns out the 190 trying to also turn around to get behind me ended up in front of me and I can slot in behind it. I am however not the only one. Two P-51s are also coming in and start to attack the D9, which soon bursts into flames and goes down. It looks like we're getting the upper hand and winning this fight, and I take this opportunity to take another look at my engine gauges. They still look fine, as expected, as I was not pushing the engine too hard. Now I join the other two P-51s as we fly back in the direction of the airfield, and this pair starts to attack a Focke-Wulf 490 at our altitude at my 11 o'clock position, while a second pair of Mustangs just takes out another Focke-Wulf 490 a little higher up. However, behind them I can see one more 190 not under attack, so I go after this one. The Focke-Wulf 490 goes into dive and I follow it. Now, the Focke-Wulf 490 tries to get a shot at the Mustang that is passing below us. The 190 doesn't get a shot at this Mustang, but the maneuver slowed it down enough so that I can close in on it quickly. Too quickly as it turns out. I only get one quick burst off before I overshoot and I have to pull back up again. After passing the Focke-Wulf 490 and pulling up, I go up into high yo-yo and then come back down behind the Focke-Wulf 490, which keeps up a turn below me. Now I close in on the Focke-Wulf 490 again, and as I get close enough I start to engage with short bursts again. I don't get much hits at first, but then I get a few hits here and there as I close in on the Focke-Wulf 490. However, even though I get a hit here and there, they don't have too much effect as of yet. The closer I get to the enemy plane, the more the location of my wing-mounted guns start to matter, and I have to start to aim a bit to the side of the 190 to avoid missing on both sides with my wing-mounted guns. I keep following the Focke-Wulf 490 and firing at it in short bursts, and I start to get some good hits on the enemy plane after a while. Then, however, just as I get in close behind the enemy plane, my guns stay silent. I'm out of ammo, so I have no choice but to disengage. Now, it looks like we have almost won anyway, but I'm not sure how long this fight will still go on, and trying to land on the airfield with enemy planes around does not seem like a good idea, so I decide to fly to another airfield further to the rear instead and land there. so I set my compass heading there and make my way in that direction. After flying a bit though, my engine is suddenly stuttering and losing power, which confuses me at first. I thought I was quite careful with it, and the engine gauges did not show any sign of trouble. This should not be happening. I try some engine controls, but it is not getting any better. Only after taking a look at the fuel pressure gauge did I realize what's going on. I took off with little fuel, and the P-51 has multiple fuel tanks, 2 wing tanks and a fuselage tank, and I simply forgot to switch from the left to the right wing fuel tank. After switching to the other tank, I am back in business and I can move on to the airfield. I thought that was quite funny, as I have read about exactly such a situation in a World War II pilot's memoirs. Funny that it happens in one of my first flights in a DCS P-51 as well. Well, I eventually reached the airfield I picked, and by now the battle is over. We destroyed all the attacking planes with only 1 or 2 Mustangs lost. So that was a look at the DCS World War II plane. I hope the little mission could show off the things you can expect from a DCS module. I wanted to have the startup of a full DCS module plane in the video, to show it off to viewers that are not familiar with the title, and I hope this mission was an interesting way of doing so. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.